Hello again, precious friends. Thanks for joining the Carnivore Hippie. I'm Aunt Patty. When I started making YouTube videos, I never intended to do direct response videos to other people's content on YouTube. But things don't always work out the way we expect. I recently saw a video that was published by a person that I greatly respect on YouTube, who is ordinarily, in my opinion, doing absolutely wonderful work, whose exposure has recently skyrocketed for good reason. But this person recently published a video that espoused some, in my estimation, rather questionable opinions and presented them as fact. And it was important enough that I felt that I just couldn't let it go. I'm not going to mention this person's name because, as I said, I respect this person a lot, and I have absolutely no interest in facilitating any ill feelings against this person from his followers or those who are interested in my content at all. I'm simply interested in putting forth the actual facts as opposed to some, as I said, possibly pretty ill-informed opinions. Okay. The first thing I wanted to address is this person basically directly stated that it is their belief that beef cattle in the U.S. are sequestered, or a significant number of beef cattle in the U.S. are sequestered for their entire lives in feedlots and subjected to horrific conditions for their entire lives. And I must state categorically, for the record, this is not true. Commercial beef cattle in the U.S. spend 75 to 90% of their lives on pasture, free roaming, eating grass. Yeah, sometimes, depending on where they're raised, they may have additional fodder trucked in, but they're free roaming. They're not locked up. They eat ad libitum grass and other forage and appropriate fodder for cattle. They're not locked up and fed grain and silage for their entire life. Sorry. Beef cattle in the U.S. are generally slaughtered at the ages of 24 to 36 months, and they spend approximately 3 to 4 months of that entire time in a feedlot being finished on grain. All right, that's just the way it is. They're not locked up for their entire lives, okay? And I think it's not only misleading to say that they are, but it's also dangerous. It could discourage people from eating beef. All right, I think we in the carnivore community ought to be engaged in encouraging people to eat more beef. All right, now, having said all of that, is feedlotting okay? Well, that's another debate. One could make the arguments that feedlotting should be stopped, but as I said, that's another debate for another video. All right, the claim that beef cattle in the U.S. are locked up and tormented in feedlots for their entire lives is simply, categorically untrue, my friend. I'm sorry, it just is. Okay. The second thing that this person put forward is that we should eat less ground beef. Now, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. But the reasons this person put forward simply don't hold a lot of water. The first is that the intimation that purveyors and producers of beef are utilizing ground beef in order to pass off lower quality pieces of meat as possibly higher quality, or undesirable pieces of meat as desirable pieces of meat. And first of all, where that falls down is, let's define quality. Are we talking about in terms of quality, are we talking about the USDA grading system? Prime, choice, select, commercial? Or are we talking about the way the meat is handled and processed as it's being slaughtered and marketed, right? Two entirely different things, all right? If we're talking about quality with regard to the USDA grading system, it's important to understand that the USDA grading system has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not the beef is wholesome, nutritious, and appropriate for human beings to eat. Absolutely not. Okay? The grading system has to do with, 1, the age of the steer at the time of slaughter, 2, the amount of fat to lean ratio in the carcass, 3, the way the fat is distributed, whether it's marbled evenly throughout the muscle masses or is it congregated in big chunks, and 4, how tender the beef is determined to be at the time of slaughter. That's it. That's how it's graded. A commercially graded cut is considered to be, or required to be, no less healthy, nutritious, and appropriate for a human being to eat than a prime grade cut. Okay? That's just the way it is. It has nothing to do with appropriateness for consumption. Now, are we talking about quality in terms of how the beef is processed, shipped, stored, and how old it is by the time it gets to the customer? Okay, if that's what we're talking about, then sorry, that one falls down too. Because if there's a purveyor that is marketing beef that's inappropriate for human beings to eat, then the likelihood is all the beef that they market is going to somehow fall down on that level. Okay, there is nobody sitting around at the beef processing plant picking out steaks and roasts saying, well, that one's almost gone, throw that in the ground beef. Well, this one's a little green, let's throw that one in the ground beef too. No, that's not happening. Okay, all of the ground beef and all of the larger cuts, roasts and steaks, are coming off pretty much the same assembly line. If a purveyor has handling problems or sanitation problems or storage problems or transportation problems, those problems are going to apply to all of the beef that's coming out of that particular facility. Okay? Sorry, that's just the way it is. Now, why is ground beef considered more dangerous than larger cuts of beef? That's simply because when the beef gets ground, if there is anything on the surface of the whole cuts of meat that are going into the grinding process, then that gets ground up and mixed into the middle. Whereas if there's anything on the surface of, say, a steak or a roast, the outside gets seared and whatever might be on the outside dies. Because the way the meat muscle exists, it's very difficult for microbes to get down in the middle of the meat unless it's pierced or ground. Okay, so if you're worried about on the off chance of something getting into your ground beef, just cook it well done and you're fine. Now, having said that, I've been eating raw ground beef regularly for about 2 years and have never experienced anything I could remotely connect to a foodborne illness from doing it. So I'm not afraid of it. Now, I would not recommend that anybody else do it. You have to do what's in your own best interest health-wise. And if you're sensitive or have significant autoimmune dysfunctions, or you may suspect that for whatever reason your immune system is depressed, yeah, probably not the best idea for you to risk raw meat. Okay, but that's individual, right? It has nothing to do with the purveyors, all right? So, thirdly, the idea that we should eat less ground beef because of chewing. Well, yeah, okay. Granted, chewing's important. Chewing's important. It's important for jaw health. It's important for dental health. And if you never chew your food, you're probably going to have poorer oral health than someone who chews a lot of food. However, having said that, to imply that eating less ground beef and more steak is going to make a qualitative difference, that's kind of iffy, my friend. There's plenty, actually, of mechanical devices that are pretty cheap that you can get from your dentist or online that will adequately exercise your jaw and provide appropriate pressure to your teeth without having to buy steak. All right. There's also other kinds of foods that you can eat. You can eat whole pieces of chicken. You can eat whole pieces of pork, which are generally way less expensive than beef. Now, if you're in a position where beef is the only thing you can tolerate and ground beef is the only thing you can afford, frankly, I would rather see you eat more ground beef and chew less, because I think in general, you're going to be more healthy. Just get a device to exercise your jaw and provide appropriate pressure to your teeth, and eat the food that you can afford. All right. Eat the healthy food, ground beef, that you can afford. All right. Frankly, I would rather see somebody eating a lot of ground beef and, say, chewing on raw carrots to exercise their jaws than someone who gets discouraged because they think that there's no point in pursuing a carnivore diet if they can't afford steak. All right. And lastly, for this video, there will be more. The idea, this person seems to have gotten the idea that the best way to add collagen to your diet is to eat whole cuts of meat. And I don't know where this idea came from, because frankly, my friend, it's not only factually untrue, but it's bass-ackwards. Ground beef is a superior source of collagen. Okay, and that's because, where does collagen in beef come from? It generally comes from the tougher cuts. And where do the toughest cuts generally wind up? In the ground beef. If you don't believe that ground beef is a superior source of collagen, get yourself a pound of ground beef, simmer it covered in a quart of water for an hour, and then refrigerate it. Okay, you will have a solid block of ground beef jello, my friend. That's collagen. All right, now I'm not suggesting that you eat it that way, because it's pretty disgusting, frankly, and because the collagen is in there whether you cook it or not. So if you want to add collagen to your diet, ground beef is absolutely a superior source of collagen, right? Sorry, that's just the truth. Okay. As I said, I have no intention of mentioning this person's name, because I have no interest in seeing this person's estimation in the eyes of their viewers be lessened. I'm just interested in addressing some just absolutely untrue factoids that have been put out there. Okay, so that's it for this one. There's going to be another one, because there's a couple of more things that I think are important enough to address. But for now, peace, love, and meat. Thank you for listening, and I will see you soon. Bye.